I now welcome Dr. Aditya Tripathi to go ahead with his lecture. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Professor Kannur. At the outset, I extend my uh, thanks to Professor Kannur and AIS for inviting me to give this talk and share with you all what I know about digitization, digital technologies, and digital libraries. Well, when we are talking about digitization, normally digitization is done with the idea that we will be going to store the information and access the information in the digital form in a digital library. Okay. Normally, the problem most of the time with the students, I get this problem that there will be always a confusion. What is digital? Okay. uh, when I ask this question to the students, many a times they say, okay, anything which is in computer, it is digital. Yes, they are absolutely correct, and even if you have that idea, you are also absolutely correct. Okay. Some students, they say we represent information as ones and two, I mean zeros and twos. One way or other way, that is also correct. Okay. But when we are talking about digital information, it is always in terms of signals. Okay. In terms of digital signals, so when digital signals are there, there are two modes of transfer. Okay. One is whether current is on and other is current is off. So there are two conditions when you represent any idea. Okay. Based on two conditions, we call it as binary. You may say it as it is 0 or 1, or you means it is up to you. Okay. To decide upon. But whenever you represent something in the form of binary representation, okay, it becomes digital. Okay. In fact, the simplest example of digital is counting on your fingers. Okay. When I say it is one, when there is one finger, when I say there is two, when there are two fingers. Okay. So this counting itself is digital. Okay. So at the outset, I thought that we should have a little discussion about what is digital before getting into digitization and digital libraries with the help of digital technologies. Anyway, as a librarian, we mostly talk about digital libraries or digital technologies. When you think about digital library, it is said that it is collection of digital objects. Okay. Which is stored in a place and retrieved through network technology on any digital reading devices. Okay. So the simplest definition of digital library can be said like this. Apart from that, if you go in much detail, you can say it is a digital collection where we do a digital object organization, storage, and distribution of these objects. In fact, if you want to see digital libraries, these are some list of digital libraries. I have given the hyperlink also. You can go to these libraries and have a look how the digital library looks like. Okay. To give you an idea that digital library is more or less, it has an interface where there is a search box or where is a browsing facility. You can search and retrieve the objects based on some metadata. Okay. So coming to a digital library, what exactly we can have in digital library. Okay. When we say what we can have in digital library, of course you can have the books, rare books, of course not microfiche and microfilm, these are analog representation, but yes, you can convert this analog representation into digital format. Okay. You can have images and slides as collection, you can have music and videos as collection, you can have old publication, office documents, sound recording, movies, and whatnot. Okay. So nowadays we are talking much more about digitization and digital technologies, especially when it comes to office management also, or record keeping in offices. Okay. Like if I say Banaras Hindu University, Banaras Hindu University is established sometime in 1916. I share with you. Okay. but the meetings and all that, they started sometime in 1906 by Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya. Okay, and in due course of more than 100 years, almost 114 years or so, uh, you know, uh, we have collected a lot of documents, lot of office documents, lot of other kind of documents, and it is a huge bulk. Okay, so in fact, BHU is now seriously working towards digitizing its office records, and it's a huge project we are doing in Banaras Hindu University. So it's not always that when we say about digital collection or digital libraries, it is a library's forte. Even in our office records or the organizations you are working, it has a much larger role to play. Okay, during my talk, I will be talking about digitization of these objects. Then, yeah, I will be talking about digitization of these objects. Then there are curative measures, which right now I am not dealing in detail in this talk, and preventive measures. These are some other day or some other time I will be talking about. And then finally, we will be talking about object delivery with least of data loss. Okay, you would be wondering that I am not using digital document as such, I am using object as a term. Okay, because when I'm talking about digital documents or books or e-journal, these are also some kind of objects. And when I say digital object, digital objects can have anything. Okay, even a movie, your video recording, sound recording, your data, your books, anything. Okay, which contains information can be a digital object. Okay, so finally, when we sum up, we create a kind of collection of these kind of objects. Now, there are major components in when we think about digital libraries. First thing, what I have already talked with you is the content. Okay, we can have multimedia content in our collection. Then based on this collection, we can come out with different kinds of products and services. Okay, see, building collection, giving the access is one part of the whole show. Okay, but coming out with innovative service based on this collection is another side of the story. Okay, which we really need to look into at some point of time when we are working with digital library. In fact, the technology plays a major role to bringing your collection, your content towards, or to give your collection, or to provide the services from your collection to ultimate customer who is your user. Okay. Finally, but last but not the least is there are socio-political conditions which are very important when we think about digitization of object. We think about changing the media. Well, there are certain major procedures or processes which we go through when we are talking about creating a digital library, or we are going to have a digitization project in our own organization. These are four major facets which you really need to look into. First is building the collection. Then second is, once you digitize, where to keep the collection. Okay, when you have a book, you have almiras to store it. Okay, when you have digital objects, you require a place to store it. Okay, a place to store where it is protected, where it can be easily retrieved. Okay, then comes the organizing these objects. In library, you have library classification to organize the objects. You follow APUPA pattern and so on and so forth. Then how you are going to do same thing with digital objects? And this is a $1,000,000 question, and I look there is much more scope by the librarians to play in this area. Finally, yes, distribution is very important. Whatever you have collected, if it is just lying in your almirah or in your device, it has no meaning unless it is distributed and used properly by the patrons or users. Whenever you are planning your digitization project, there are certain things you really need to look in. These are some points which normally occur to me, and with my limited experience with the BHU digitization project, I have pointed out some of these points. First thing, which is most important, is you need to frame your goal. What really you are going to do, okay? That you have to frame your goal. Whatever you are digitizing, what ultimately you are going to do with this particular digitized objects, okay? Whether you are giving a seamless access to these objects, or whether it is only for archival purpose, okay? So you need to set a pre-planned goal of your project. Then comes who are all your audience, okay? That means if you have set up a plan that I will digitize digital objects and I'll give access to digital objects, or I will archive these digital objects for long-term preservation, who are the audience, who are the patrons, who are the users, who are the customers who are going to use your product at the end of the day, okay? As per your audience, you have to decide your project, whether your audience is, you know, a remotely situated user, or whether your audience is within your campus. Based on that, you need to decide many things like file format, compression, and so on and so forth, okay? So these two are very important thing. Then you need to define the scope of your content. What is the subject area you are going to cover, whether it is what is the type of objects you are going to cover, whether it is only paper, whether it is graphics or images, or whether it includes video, audio, or like that. Ultimately, you evaluate your source collection in terms of copyright. This is a very important, and sometimes it becomes a hindrance towards creating digital libraries. I always say creating digital library for us, it is 1 hour or 2 hour job. Okay, I can have a system already within an hour or two, okay, as per your desire. But populating the system with the data, populating the system with the objects is a big hurdle, okay? Many times copyright comes into picture. You have material with you, but you are not allowed to change your media of your the object you own, okay? Then comes the format and size of your collection. Not only collection, each individual object also you are going to talk about. Then comes level of indexing. What is the level of indexing you are going to give, whether you are clustering your objects, or whether you are just giving a kind of database level search, or so on and so forth, okay? Then comes finally the crux of your project. Who are all the people who are going to be part as a staff in your project? What would be the time frame? And most important, what is the amount of money you are going to spend, okay? Normally it is said that these projects are very costly affair. Yes, these are very costly affair, but again you need to think about long-term goal of the objects, or of the service you are going to offer to your users, okay? When we talk about content and the collection of the content, we need to talk about the quality. When we say quality, quality is like quality of your service, quality of your collection, quality of the object, the file formats and the display of the objects. Sit Take an example, YouTube videos, okay? Whenever you upload your YouTube video, it takes some time to get it on for public. What they do behind the scene is, when you upload your video, they create different level of resolution out of it, okay? Different level of resolution video out of it. So it is not only one video you are going finally it is there in collection. You upload one video, but there are different resolution of same video placed in different places, okay? So based on your device, based on your network access, you get the video streaming, okay? If you have a very good video streaming network line, then you get high definition. If you have a little bit poor network line, you get a moderate resolution or lower resolution, okay? Then comes the cost of acquisition or licensing. See, as I told you that copyright plays a major role. So whenever you are changing the media, you need to acquire the permission, okay? So many times if it is non-profit or it is to some organization, copyright is there, they grant you. But say for example, when the object has commercial interest, then you have to buy the license, okay, to change the media. And this doesn't come very cheap as such, okay. Finally, the cost of digitization, you require equipment, you require software, you require, you know, maintenance for sustaining your project. Talking about digital objects in your digital collection, there are two kinds of objects. As you know, we first one we call it as formatted objects or the analog objects. Okay, analog objects are, you know, your physical book. Okay, that is a analog object, or say your video on a video tape. Okay, on a tape device, if you have a video or audio, this is an analog object. Okay, so what we do is we format these objects into digital format, so we call these objects as formatted objects. Okay, so analog converted object into digital is known as formatted object, whereas, you know, we nowadays we are generating digital objects, right? I am giving this lecture and it is being recorded, it is born digital. Okay, that means the basic genesis of the, you know, information is in digital format. You don't have to do much in conversion and all that, except if you want file conversion, file compression and all that. Okay, so we have normally two kinds of object in our digital collection. One is formatted object, other one is born digital object. Now in our digital collection, as such, in libraries, when we talk, we can have e-journals, we can have e-books, you can have a lot of databases like newspapers, articles, you can have reference materials, and so on and so forth. Apart from that, you can have cartographic material and all that in your library. Okay, you know, what really, when we talk about digitization, you need to convert them into digital format, this printed material. Again, as I told you, copyright plays a major role. So sometimes you need to pay for it. Sometimes you need to convince the person that you are going to use it for fair purpose, and they may grant you permission. So at the end of the day, whenever you are going to use a digital object, it must have a licensing agreement. Okay, when you are converting a media, because sometimes it becomes a very serious affair. Okay, this is a, you know, a small demonstrating chart I have prepared for digitization. Normally I use it with my all the students when I teach them. You know, you have an image in physical format, or you may have a text object in your in the physical format. What we do is we used to scan them. Okay, you used to scan them and convert into digital format. Take for example images, you scan them, these images, and then you can edit these images. Now how do you scan these objects? You require a scanner. Okay, it's a hardware device, or otherwise you can use a plain, you know, digital camera and you can just shoot it. Okay, or you can have a mobile device, and nowadays we are using this left and right and take a photograph and that's it, it is scanned. Okay, we have a lot of applications in our mobile itself for scanning. Okay, so in fact, for day-to-day life it is very good, but when we really talk about a professional scanning, you require a scanner or specific devices or a specific digital cameras with a good amount of resolution. Okay, then once you scan these objects, you require to edit these images. See, I have the experience with the, you know, some of the libraries where they have very old collection of photographs, and many of these photographs are damaged. Okay, some photograph is there and termite has eaten away, you know, some part of Mona Lisa painting. Okay, with digital technology you can repair those images. Okay, in fact, even with your good old, means old photographs, if you would have seen in your family about your parents and all that, probably those are damaged, and then your photograph recreates them. Okay, so this is the editing part of it. Okay, so we many times we edit these objects and then finally we save it. Okay, when we save it, we go for a suitable compression algorithm, a compressed file format, okay, so that it occupies least space, okay. This is very important because when you are transferring the data over network, if the size of the file is less, it is easily transferred. But say for example, if you're going for archiving purpose, you need to store always raw, okay. Raw means plain BMP file you store with huge size, okay. But whenever you are using it for purpose or over network, this BMP file has to be compressed in some kind of JPEG format or GIF or whatever you feel like, a PNG format. So when we are digitizing, there are many issues we really need to look in. Coming to text objects, again you require a scanner to scan the text objects, followed by you can store the text objects or the page of the book as an image itself if you want. Otherwise, there is a facility of OCR, okay, optical character recognition. So what OCR does is, it reads the object. If it is a printed text, it reads the object, it reads the text and converts it into an editable text, okay. When it is converted into editable text, then you can edit the text within the object. That is very important. But let me tell you about OCR technology for English and other European languages. We have very good OCR tools available, softwares available. But for Indian languages, yes, there are tools, there are initiatives, okay. Some of them I have also used, but again we still have a long way to go, okay. Like Devanagari or Hindi, as you know, when I do OCR with some of the products available, we find it little difficult, okay. So with Indian languages and all that, probably OCR we have limitation with OCR technology. In fact, the problem is much more, situation becomes difficult when you are scanning a manuscript. Manuscripts are basically handwritten scriptures, okay, on some kind of paper or some kind of barch, Tadpatra or Bhojpatra or those kind of objects, okay. So when such objects, handwritten stuff is there, those are it is very very difficult, okay, to OCR because handwriting may differ and all that. So what we do in such cases, we store these objects as images, okay, in compressed format. So this is the a framework of digitization of the objects we have in libraries. When we talk about digitization, we require certain equipments to use. We require conversion devices, that means scanning devices, that means converting from analog to digital. We require conversion and editing software. When I say conversion and editing software, means once you scan it, you need to edit it, okay. So you require some kind of OCR software, you require some kind of image editor, okay. You require some software to convert file formats, okay, because from raw format you want to convert into more usable and compressed format. So you require some kind of software for that also, okay. Ultimately, when you have a digital object, you need the devices where you can store these objects, okay. And there should be devices of displaying these objects, like your mobile or your videos and so on and so forth. In fact, nowadays everything we are talking about mobile technology, so your display should be such a way configured, or your file format should be such that it can be used even on your mobile phone, okay. And then comes the output devices, like you want to print these objects, you want to write it into some offline media. You require certain equipment for that also. Talking about the hardware and software, about digitization tools, what you require is very generic. You require some computers. You may have servers and clients, okay. A client you can say as workstations. You require scanners, you require digital and video cameras, you require audio and video capture card in your device where you are using. Okay, nowadays, in fact, in your mobile also has audio video capture device. In fact, good old days, we used to struggle in our computer to have video capture card. Okay, it was a very costly device to have in our computers. Okay, but nowadays you have a lot more tools around. So, when we are talking about servers, you have different kinds of models of servers. You can have tower server, like your, CPU box you have next to you. That is tower model. You have rack model. You have blade model. Okay. So, depending on your, capacity or your need, you need to decide upon which kind of server you can have for storage of object, for having the software on your digital library, or hosting your digital library, or hosting your digitization project. Okay, or to host as a document server. Okay, so you need to decide upon these kind of servers. Normally, towers are the cheapest one, racks are a bit costlier, and blades are costliest one. Okay. uh, Talking about the client or workstation, you can have desktop PC, you can have your laptop, or you can have even mobile devices to be used as client. Yes, this is very important when we talk about the scanning devices. You have normally these four kinds of scanners you would have seen around. The most important or the easiest one you would have seen is flatbed scanner at your next to your machine. Okay, where you can keep your device, your object or your book, and then you scan it as like normal photocopier. Okay, that is a flatbed scanner. Then we have handheld scanners. Normally, it is used for scanning your QR codes, or for scanning your what do you call what is that? Uh, we have QR codes, and that line things are there. So those things also you want to scan, and these are through handheld scanners. And when you go to any grocery shop, and there you have a lot of barcodes. Yeah, I was forgetting the word. You have barcode readers. Okay, so these are basically handheld scanners which we use. Then you have overhead scanners. You would have seen in your libraries. These are basically devices with the camera on top, and there is a down flatbed. You keep the book and then turn the pages, and then your device take photographs of the book. And we have a feed through scanners. These are normally, it looks like a plotter kind of device. As feed through scanner, you put your document and scans it through. So normally for the charts and all that, we have feed through scanners. Then we have digital camera and video camera. Now, in fact, your digital camera itself has video recording also. Your mobile has both the facilities, video and audio record, video, audio, and digital recording. So any of these devices you can use. Talking about software, you require scanning software. In fact, whenever you buy your scanner, it has some kind of scanning software given already with the scanner itself to you. Okay, and many times these scanning software have very primitive kind of OCR recognition software also embedded with the software itself. Okay, but in fact, again, I tell you, these OCR softwares are fairly good. They are doing fairly good. In fact, CAM scanners in our mobile, that also has a kind of OCR software. When you take a photograph of English document, it converts into a kind of readable text. Okay, in the PDF format or so. So we have now OCR softwares also available, but there are commercial OCR softwares are also available, like TextBridge, and good old days we had OmniPage Pro. So these are Abifine Reader. So these are some professional OCR softwares available in the market, which you can buy. Okay. Then you require some kind of graphic editors like your Adobe Photoshop and all that to edit the images. And if you have multimedia objects like video or audio, you require multimedia editors like Authorware, Director, or maybe if you are more professional, you can use Maya kind of software. Uh, Talking about once you have your digitization done, you need to host everything, and the best place to do that is you have to have a digital library software. Normally, I am talking about a very primitive functionality associated with any digital library software. Is it should have a document storage facility. It should have handling the metadata. That means you can feed the metadata along with the object itself, and then software should provide you a searching facility and document delivery. These four basic functionalities are a must for any digital library software. Okay, I'm not talking about even online and offline. Okay, even if your object is on a CD and it gives you these all facility on a CD on a standalone machine, that also can be called as digital library software. Okay, so that is why many times they say it has to have a network access. No, it is not necessary that all digital library should have a network access. Okay, so yeah, it is a kind of nearly mandatory facility that when we talk about digital library software or digital library as such, your library should be accessible over network. Otherwise there is no good with having a digital library. Okay, uh, so in a digital, when you have digitized the object, you need to store your object in certain kind of a system. Okay, in some system where you should ingest your object. Okay, when you ingest your object, there are certain things you really need to know beforehand. Okay, when you ingest your object, you may ingest your object in certain place. We call it as a repository. It is like you are keeping your object in an almirah. Okay, an almirah is a repository. Okay, so you can have different almirah, you can have different repositories. Okay, and when you are keeping these objects in the repository, we need to feed some kind of metadata with the object itself. Okay, when I say some kind of metadata, it is important because we need to know how to identify the object, on what topic or with which area this object is related. So some kind of descriptive elements are also required. It is like having your catalog in a library. Okay, so you require some kind of descriptive elements, you require some kind of identification elements in order to pull the object from the repository. Okay, apart from that, there are other metadata elements. Okay, there are certain metadata elements, we call them as administrative metadata. There is certain metadata like we call it rights metadata, where we can have ownership or copyright kind of data. You can have technical metadata with related to the object, like file formats, size of the file, and so on and so forth. You can have behavioral metadata, how an object should perform in a particular environment. That also you need to store somewhere. And at the end of the day, if you are storing the object for long-term preservation, okay, you require preservation metadata elements. So there are different kind of metadata elements. Okay, these metadata elements also must be stored along with your digital object. So you would understand the problem is fairly it is not that fairly simple. Okay, like I have digitized it, I have taken the photograph, and now it is converted into digital. When you convert into digital, they afterwards also you have to do a lot of processing. You need to make many data elements associated with the object so that it can be properly used or to make it usable for the users. Okay, so this is the model which I have shown you. It gives you a kind of ingestion module for any data repository system. These are some basic digital library software you all must be knowing: Greenstone, ePrints, and DSpace. There are much more, but DSpace is very popular. In fact, good old days when we started, Greenstone was very popular in 2000. Okay, in fact, this was the first digital library software which we have seen from our eyes. Then ePrints and DSpace came over the period of time. Anyway, Talking about the special collections when we have in our library, like you can have maps, musics, videos, graphic elements, or different kind of objects. Like you can have the softwares as as an object for your library. Okay, so as I told you in the beginning itself, I'm not calling any entity which you are storing in your digital library as a document. I'm calling it as an object. Okay, because an object can be anything in digital format. Okay, so when you are having, apart from your regular books or e-journals or article, you can have a special collection. Okay, when you have these special collection, you have certain requirements to change the media from the physical to digital format for file compression, as I have talked about you. But mind it, when we have special collection, it is a supplement, it is not the substitute of the original. See, what happens is, I give you an example of museum object. Okay, say there is a sculpture of Buddha in a museum. Okay, or in Sarnath museum we have Gandhar style Buddha. Okay, I can have a digital image of that Buddha. Okay, I can have where I can have the length, breadth, everything of that particular statue of Buddha. But say, for example, when I have to look the material of Buddha, I need to go and touch the physical statue. Otherwise, to study the face expression, to study the size, to study the shape, yes, I can have a digital image where I can, or digital model of the particular Buddha statue, and I can do the study. But the moment I have to study the material or the stone which has been used, okay, you need to go and touch that. If you have to look for a weight or density of the stone or density of the statue, you need to go and do the test with the statue. Okay, so I always say that digital format can supplement. Okay, it cannot be substitute. Then coming to the storage of these digital objects, you require file conversions. You need to convert the file into compressed format. When I say compression, you have two ways of compression. One is lossy compression and other is lossless compression. Okay, so when I say lossy compression, that means when you compress the file, the quality of file goes down. Okay, but when I say lossless compression, that means when you are reusing the object, whatever you have stored, you are getting the same output. Whereas in lossy compression, whatever you have stored, when you are using it, there would be slight decay in the quality of the object. I can give you another analogy. When we are traveling, okay, to one place to other place. Now, anyway, it is very difficult to travel in this environment. But when you are traveling, we keep the our dresses in a suitcase. Okay, what we do is we fold them properly and then we iron them, fold them, and then we keep it inside the suitcase, and then we travel. Okay, but again, when we reach the destination, we are going to wear our clothes. Okay, when you open your shirt, you will see crease in it wherever you have folded. Okay, so you had compressed your shirt and when you ironed it. Okay, but when you started using it, you are going to wear it, you have a kind of quality loss in your output. Okay, you find creases in your shirt. So it is one example. When I often give this example to our students. Okay, what is lossy compression? Okay, whereas lossless means you take that shirt as it is from this place to other place. Okay, it is completely lossless, but the pain, you require that particular space, you require a kind of transportation system and all that. Okay, so lossless has its own pain, lossy has its own pain. Okay, you need to decide upon both of them. In fact, in our digitization projects at BHU, what we do is we are storing the objects into both format, raw as well as lossy format. Okay, compressed format. So raw will be always there in archive. whenever or anytime there is a problem, we can retrieve lossless. Okay, whereas lossy will be used in our day-to-day activity. Okay, then you require streaming technology. That means for distribution of object from one place to other place, from one point to other point, or otherwise you can have a discrete file for transfer. Talking about the objects, we have text, audio, video, graphics, but the key issue is data compression, as I talked with you. Okay, when we talk about data compression, file formats do come in picture. What should be the best file format? So there are many file formats for audio, video, text, and all that. So these are some file formats. I am talking about only the file formats which are open and free. Okay, even file formats are proprietary. Okay, like talking about MS Word. Okay, sometime in 2000 and all that, MS Word was a binary format and it was proprietary format. Even your PDF was initially a proprietary format. Afterward, it became open. Okay, so a proprietary format are the formats for which you require a proprietary software to read that particular object. Okay, like your Adobe what do you call Photoshop, that particular format, PSD format, is a proprietary format. Okay, when you store in the proprietary format, different layers of the image which you have stored, they are intact, and when you open, you can work with different layers of the image in PSD format. But the moment you convert that into JPEG format, all layers are flattened in one, and then it is only one layer. Okay, so then you cannot work with different layers. So proprietary formats and open formats, they all have their own pros and cons, but for proprietary format you require proprietary softwares to work with. Okay, so these are examples of some of text formats which you can use, like ASCII, or plain text. You have LaTeX, DVI, HTML, okay, PDF, and nowadays we are using heavily XML format. These are the formats, open formats for images, which you can use. JPEG, PNG, serial vector graphics, okay, and the TIFF format. So normally when we store the objects as a raw format, it is plain TIFF format, okay, or maybe sometime you can have BMP format, but TIFF is completely lossless. Okay, so raw formats are normally it is TIFF format, and the size of the same file would be much more in TIFF compared to JPEG or PNG, because PNG and JPG, these are compressed formats. Okay, these are some WAV file formats or audio file formats which are open. You can look into your WAV, the very good old format, WAV, WAV format is open format. Nowadays you can have AU from Sun, MID format, which is open and free. So these are audio formats. The FLV files you see on web, these are open format. Your MPEG is, it is an open format as video. Organizing these objects in your collection is another important issue or aspect which we really need to look into. The first thing is indexing. Okay, when we talk about indexing, we are very good with text indexing as librarians. Okay, so text indexing should not be a problem for us. Okay, and with computer, yes, we are great. Okay, we know word by word indexing, and within no time we can index the object. We can have metadata associated with the object, and we index as per the metadata elements. So text indexing should not be a problem for us. Whereas image indexing is a bit difficult and multimedia indexing is a bit difficult. Okay, but there are initiatives of image indexing also, like we have resembled objects, we do with coloring match and all that. But again, image indexing is a bit bitter cup of tea. Okay, image indexing and multimedia indexing also, objects also, you need to have metadata associated with it. Okay, like your file name itself, if your file name itself is aditya.jpg okay, so if anybody is searching for Aditya, it goes to the name of the file and searches whether word Aditya is there or not, and when it finds, that word Aditya is there, so it brings out. Probably my photograph is not there in that particular file, but even then it has brought that Aditya file, okay, aditya.jpg for you to view, understanding that the text of the file, the name of the file is Aditya, okay. So this is a kind of, text based indexing, okay. Then comes metadata, which is very important. The simplest metadata we use with digital objects is, Dublin core elements. But apart from that, if you want, we are, kings of metadata like Mark 21, Unimark, and we are doing it decades before this activity, okay. So, it is up to you to decide which metadata scheme you want to use, whether you want to use Mark 21 or whether you want to use Dublin core metadata elements. But see, for a very basic kind of library or very basic kind of approach, Dublin core elements are good enough. These 15 elements are good enough. But again, you have qualified Dublin core also associated with Dublin core. If you are more keen on or more specific on indexing the objects, or to have a more specific search associated with the object, you can opt for qualified Dublin core. But I tell you, these elements, 15 elements, are even supported by Google. So many of your digital libraries which are built on Dublin core, they are searchable on Google, okay. That means Google can harvest that metadata. Now, talking about the objects and the metadata, how they are associated with each other, okay. See, when we keep an object, okay, we associate with different kind of metadata elements with the object itself. See, this is a small diagram showing the size of your object, okay. The center red spot is the size of your object. It's a very small object, but you see the around circles or the amount of data associated with metadata, okay. So you have different kinds of metadata like administrative and preservation metadata. You have structural metadata, what is the structure of the object, like characterization or file numbering, which file should play when and how. So structural metadata is associated with that. You have technical and rights metadata associated with it, and at the top you have your descriptive and identification metadata. So completely, you see, it is a kind of a package, okay. We call it a submission information package in our digital archiving environment, okay. So it becomes a package, and this is the way an object has to be ingested, okay. Now it is up to you to decide where to keep metadata, where to keep object. It is completely your decision whether the metadata should be kept along with the object itself, or whether the metadata is stored in some place, object is stored in some place. Like in our library, catalog is stored in one place, your actual books are stored in your stacks, okay. So which is the model? It is up to you, or it is up to the software to decide how you are going to do this, okay. But definitely, when you are preparing an object, you have to work for metadata also for the object, okay. And when you are preparing the metadata, these are the aspects which are really important, you need to look into before taking decision on what metadata scheme you are going to use, whether you are using Dublin core, or you are using Mark 21, or you are using mods, or you are using premise framework. You have to decide upon. Then comes the distribution, okay, distribution of the object. When you have created the storage is there, object is there in your Almira, object is there in your hard disk, object is there in your device. How you are going to deliver it, okay. What would be the medium, okay, whether it is offline or whether it is online, whether it is on if it is online, whether you are doing it on internet or whether it is within the limited intranet area, okay. So media also you really need to look into. Then comes the organizational level, whether it is at international level you are going to, that is global, or it has national level, state level, or only for your own organization, okay, like with you, okay. So you need to decide how you are going to distribute your collection. That has to be taken care as a librarian by you, okay. This is the retrieval module. You can see you have the object plus metadata which has been ingested in this. Here, if you see, then you have search agent which actually performs the search. It's a search program or your search engine, whatever you call it. Then you have different repositories associated with that. Okay, your search agent or your search box or your search interface uses a descriptive metadata element, and it goes to search agent, and then search agent goes to different repositories with the identification metadata as per the descriptive metadata element, then pulls out the object along with other metadata if it is required, or finally it is the document delivery. So if you see your search interface has two parts. First is search and second is document delivery. Then inside, if you see in your system, it is your search engine or your search agent and different repositories where you have stored your actual objects. It can be different repositories, it can be one repository as such. I think it is 12 o'clock. I need to go a little fast. Okay. Then comes, means I'm talking about access. When I say that you have to have a interface design, here your actual vision of human computer interaction comes. Okay. About the usability of your interface. Then comes your information retrieval aspect. Your search should be interactive, or you just want to give one way kind of search with search box where a person can do the searching. It is up to you. It is to decide, okay, whether you want to support it with natural language processors in the back end, or you want to have a non-text, like somebody can click on a book cover and then book comes. Okay, so it is a kind of non-textual retrieval. So with an image assistance, you can give retrieval. So this all is your vision and your view how your system should perform. And finally, you need to build up the services on it. Okay, like you want to have a synchronous service, that means one-time service. Okay, I asked and you gave it. Okay, or you can have asynchronous service, that means service is available for a longer time, a service is open for everybody. Okay, you can say it is on demand and anticipation services, like that. Okay, talking about the service, you first need to identify your patrons, your users, your customers who are going to use your service, and based on their need, you need to devise the service. Okay, say if your user is not a techno savvy, okay, and you give him you ask him, okay, you go and search on this particular interface of the library and view the document. Now if the user is not techno savvy, he cannot do that. So for him, you require to have a different kind of setup of service. Okay, or say for example, your patron is staying at a longer distance. Okay, where network connectivity is poor, say for example northeast. Okay, now for him, whatever object you are generating on retrieval over network should be in a compressed format, so that it should utilize least bandwidth and takes less time to deliver from source to destination. Okay, so when you are devising the service, many decisions you have to take based on the type of your patron or your user, his situation and all that. Okay, or the environment he is working with. Then second is you can decide upon different kinds of service, like search service, reference service, or you can have a routing service, or like in other words we call it as referral services. Because say for example, why you need to store an object which is already there stored in some other repository? Okay, it is just misusing of your own resource, okay, or storage area. So in your library there could be a link to that particular repository if somebody searches for that particular object. Okay, the metadata is there in your library, and when somebody is searching, the metadata is retrieved and then it is redirected to the other library. Okay, so kind of a routing system you can have. Okay, and finally instruct the user what he should do or what he should not do, or how he should use the system. Talking about technological requisites, you require, as I talk with you, computer hardware. You require high-speed internet networking. In fact, now in this COVID environment, sometimes we really feel, okay, no, this bandwidth is not good enough. Okay, so you require a fairly good amount of bandwidth. Okay, when we are in such kind of environment. Security is a very important issue because sometimes your site can be hacked or all that. And most important is interoperability. Okay, I can cite an example with you have an object in your library or a book in your library, and then somebody searches for it. You can associate that particular book with some reviews of Amazon or something like that. Okay, or some other services, some blogs. Okay, so say for example, the data from that particular blog, if it is interoperable, you can straight away use that. Okay, nowadays we are talking much more about interoperability. In fact, as a librarian, we were talking it long back. Okay, when we are talking about union catalogs and all that. So the idea of interoperability is not new for librarians. Okay, so we need to talk about interoperability. Then most important is your cultural, economic, and political challenges. Okay, cultural standardization versus empowering individual expression. Whether you are making your product or your library for mass or it is for specific people. Okay, that decision you have to make. I really do not know what would be the scene. Okay, this is your decision making. Or your collection is publicly accessible, or your collection is for private use. Okay, intellectual property right is very important in such environment, and most important when you have to protect your objects. The security and authority comes as a very primary issue. Okay, sometimes I have created an object even on my Facebook entries. Okay, I write many things on Facebook, but everything is not visible to everybody. Okay, so I may hesitate to share few things, or I may only share with some of my friends. Okay, so a kind of environment even you may see in digital library environment. And most important is cost. When you are going to ask for a high cost from your organization, I don't know what is going to happen or how they are going to take it with this need of money. Role of information professionals, we need to look in as only as service provider. Okay, we need to work as system interface designer. We should keep ourselves only to mediator or moderator or broker or whatever you call, but you are ultimately a librarian. Okay, you are an interface between the information and the user. You facilitate the use of information from user you facilitate the use of information for users. Okay, so that he can be best benefited by the information. Well, now I am in my final slide. So all your digitization work or digitization project you do with digital technologies, you need to look upon really what you are going to do with this digital collection. Okay, what is the objective of converting your digital objects to your analog objects to digital object, or storing any bond digital object within your organization or by you or by your colleagues on your subject. You have to make the decision what you are going to do with this. Okay, just storing everything has no meaning. Okay, what is useful, when it is useful, that is very important. Okay, because otherwise it becomes like our usual internet. Okay, in internet if you search for with a term, you get million or billions of results. Okay, so it has no meaning. Yeah, I think I'm just finishing it off. So when you are doing this digitization work, you have to be really selective. You have to really make some decisions about how you are going to do it, what should be the file format, what should be the compression, how you are going to finally deliver it to your user. I think with this remark, I will finish off my this talk, and I have once again thank Professor Kannur to give me an opportunity so that I could share my experience with you. I thank one and all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Aditya Tripathi, sir. It was a very enlightening talk on digital libraries and digitization concept, and many of the questions have come, and most of the participants have liked your presentation, and many of them have asked for a PPT also. This shows that
Yes, definitely.
very keen on
I'll share with it.
uh, Thank you, sir. Now I request Dr. Nagappa to consolidate the questions and moderate the program in a nutshell, small, in 4 to 5 questions. And remaining questions will be answered by the speaker through LIS Academy to the users, to the participants directly. My one message to the participant is that, sir, all the speakers video along with PPT will be uploaded on the YouTube of LIS Academy channel. After completing of this particular season, we will place it on the YouTube after curating through the author himself. So the presenter himself will get an opportunity to curate that and give it back to us, and then we will be able to place it on LIS Academy YouTube channel, and all of you can access it. Not only you can also promote it among the student community also. Now I request Dr. Nagappa to take.
Yeah. To all of you, and thanks, Dr. Aditya Tripathi, for giving a very insightful talk. It was very descriptive and elaborative. Without wasting time, just we'll go through some of the selected questions. There are almost about 69 questions as of now, 70 questions as of now.
My God.
Right, to avoid the time, you can take off remaining questions offline.
Yeah.
Question is like from SJ Jain, asking about can JED 39.50 standard applied in digital libraries? Is it particularly possible, practically possible to import the metadata from other digital repositories?
I thank you for giving me this opportunity to answer this question. See, there are two things. One is Z39.50 protocol, and other one is OAI-PMH, Open Archive Initiative for metadata harvesting. Okay, protocol for metadata harvesting. When we talk about Z39.50 protocol, okay, it is mostly related with sharing or exposing your library catalogs across, okay, where you can download the catalog and all that. If you go to Library of Congress website, they have an interface where you can use Z39.50 protocol and perform the search. So they have hosted their OPAC on a Z39.50 server. But when it comes to digital library, see, we use normally, or the present systems, whatever we are using, like ePrint or DSpace or even your Greenstone and all that, they have OAI-PMH inbuilt. Okay, so OAI-PMH only works with Dublin Core metadata elements. So when you are storing your metadata in Dublin Core, okay, you can expose your metadata of your digital library to other search agents. Okay, like Google can harvest your digital library metadata, but it cannot harvest your Z39.50 enabled server metadata. Okay, so that is the basic difference. And on your Z39.50 server, it is not really important which standard you are using. Okay, whether you are using Mark 21 or you are using Unimark or you are using Giles or you are using Dublin Core, it is hardly immaterial. Z39.50 protocol is only to expose your library catalog metadata. Okay, to expose your library catalog. So these are two different things. Okay, one is related to automation, other is related to your digital library as such. Okay, so whenever you are exposing OPAC of your library, it can be done on Z39.50 protocol. But whenever, I think, I should read it.
Sorry.
So whenever you are doing with digital library, it is always OIP image.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Aditya. Next question is from, it seems from Hyderabad, Dr. O. Shivshankar Prasad. Sometimes confidentiality and security access is important for, particularly for the documents in government offices. Is digitization suggestible in such a cases?
Yes, you can have digitization. See, for example, even when you are keeping it physical also.
And he has some further question also on the same. Whether the access can be limited to a particular user or like particular group for a particular document, something like that.
Oh, definitely. Say,
you can give a crisp answer so that next question.
See, in digital format also, in digital archive also, you can restrict the access to the people. Okay, it's not that whenever you are putting on a digital server, it is available to everybody. So it is security, in fact, is much better in digital environment, because in digital environment, I always say only once there will be hack. Okay, only once there will be hack, next time you can close that port. Okay, so security is much better in digital environment compared to, you know, in your physical format.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from this is from Vishala, Dr. Vishala BK. If the project, if the object is too large or big in size, for example, old map, taking the photo may spoil the quality of the object. We take this kind of like photos in bits and pieces and combined to get the more clarity. Is there any software for such a thing?
You can always do that with any kind of image editor. You can take different sections of image, put it in any image editor. If you want, I can do it in even Adobe Photoshop.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not a big deal now adding different sections of the photograph and clubbing in one.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Sir, one more question I have taken, so I'll just read out.
Go ahead.
Dr. Umesh Prasad asking, is there any special equipment to digitize very fragile archival document, example, about 150-year-old document which is not touchable or cannot be handled?
Yeah, it is very difficult. In fact, when we digitize manuscripts, it comes, this kind of problem comes, because the moment you touch them, it is so brittle, it breaks. Okay, so it is always good to have, overhead scanners for that. Okay, and then with the, forceps and a kind of, this thing, you can turn the pages and then you take the photograph. Otherwise, the moment you put your hand, it breaks. Okay.
Thank you so much. Over to Professor Konnur, sir. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Aditya Tripathi, sir, and
thank you, Professor Konnur.